Let's get started. Here's the brief. News from the world over this week. The advance of ISIS continues. On Sunday, the jihadist militants overran a strategic airbase in northeastern Syria. It was home to Syrian warplanes, squadrons, helicopters, tanks, artillery, and ammunition bunkers. It was the last government-held outpost in a region already dominated by ISIS. Photo and video of the ISIS victory were posted on the militant group's website, including the death march and apparent execution of Syrian troops. The photos and video confirm the reported executions of at least 250 soldiers after the airbase was seized. And in Iraq, Christian refugees fleeing the Islamic State terrorists are turning to religious and political leaders for a way to escape Iraq. This, according to the Syrian International News Agency. In the Kurdish capital of Erbil alone, refugee deaths are averaging 5 a day in recent weeks because of the lack of resources. Large numbers of families are sleeping on sidewalks and in public parks. The fear is that the situation and their plight will extend into the winter. Meanwhile, a small number of Christian communities continue to make their way back home in Iraq. About 200 families from Al-Qash, one of the oldest Christian cities in the world, returned to their homes and churches. The return to the old city north of Mosul was facilitated by Peshmerga forces, which repelled the militants with the help of U.S. airstrikes. Returning residents are in sore need of basic supplies. Father Gabriel Tuma is helping to distribute food to families. He told the Associated Press that the locals' return will not be easy because of the danger. But, he said, we put our faith in God that the situation will be back to normal again and the families will go back to their homes. More about the global fight against ISIS, the future of Iraq, and its Christians in our next segment. And the Italian daily Il Tempo is reporting that ISIS could be targeting Pope Francis as part of its jihad against Europe and the West. The front page story cited Italian intelligence and Israeli sources claiming that they believe Pope Francis is in the crosshairs of Islamic State terrorists. The reason? Because he is the greatest exponent of Christianity and the so-called bearer of false truth. Vatican spokesman Father Federico Lombardi rejected the report, calling it nothing serious. He told EWTN's Catholic news agency, quote, "There is no particular concern in the Vatican. This news has no foundation," end quote. Top Ukrainian officials announced on Thursday that Russia has begun a full-scale invasion of their country. According to U.S. intelligence sources, up to 1,000 Russian troops have crossed Ukraine's southern border and are fighting alongside pro-Russian rebels. The United Nations Security Council held an emergency meeting on Ukraine out of concern for the apparent escalation of fighting in the region. U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Samantha Power, accused Russia of outright lying after Moscow denied the invasion. According to the UN statistics, over 2,000 people have been killed in the conflict thus far, with 800,000 displaced from their homes. In other news, the number of migrant deaths along the U.S.-Mexican border continue to climb. The bodies of 2 Mexican nationals were found this week in Brooks County in South Texas. As reported by Breitbart, police received a 911 distress call from a woman who was among a group of 20 or so immigrants who crossed the unsecured border. She indicated that her husband and 1 other man had already perished. The deaths bring the total number of immigrants found dead in the small rural county to 48 this year. Meanwhile, the Mexican government has announced new measures to prevent migrants from using a freight train known as the Beast to travel north towards the U.S. border. A government official said the effort is an attempt to ensure the security and protection of migrants. The measures are part of a larger plan to deal with the influx of migrants from Central America aiming to reach the U.S. Mexico is also promising to increase security along its porous southern border. And Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal filed a lawsuit Wednesday against the Obama administration, accusing it of forcing states to adopt the controversial Common Core education program. According to the lawsuit, the U.S. Department of Education is illegally manipulating $4.3 billion in grants, as well as regulation waivers, in order to push states into adopting Common Core standards and testing. Developed by and adopted by more than 40 states, including Louisiana, Common Core offers yearly student benchmarks for achievement in math and English. Governor Jindal supported Louisiana adopting Common Core in 2010. He recently appeared on The World Over and discussed why he reversed course.
Here's the problem with Common Core. It represents a federal takeover of what has historically been a state and local responsibility. In Louisiana, we don't have state textbooks you have to use. We don't have a state curriculum. We allow locals, we believe in empowering locals to make those decisions.
More on Common Core during our debate later in the show. And the ubiquitous ALS Ice Bucket Challenge is getting an icy reception from several Catholic dioceses. At issue, the ALS Association's funding of embryonic stem cell research. In case you've been under a rock the past few weeks and have missed the fundraising phenomenon for Lou Gehrig's disease, here's how it works. Participants douse themselves with ice water, post a video of the dousing on Facebook, and then challenge 3 others to do the same while making a donation to the ALS Association. The videos have raised more than $100 million. The dioceses don't want to discourage ALS awareness, so they're encouraging donations to organizations in line with church teaching on the issue. To that end, the John Paul II Medical Research Institute said that since the start of the Ice Bucket Challenge, it has received hundreds of thousands of dollars in donations from people who want to support ALS research but don't want the research done using human embryos. And finally, the King will soon return to the building, sort of. The estate of Elvis Presley is teaming up with Pulse Evolution to bring the King of Rock and Roll back for live performances as a hologram. This according to Scripps Treasure Coast newspapers. In May, Pulse created Michael Jackson's holographic performance for the Billboard Music Awards, and it received rave reviews. Holographic Elvis had previously made an appearance with Celine Dion on American Idol. This time, a 60 to 90-minute live show is in the works that's expected to play in, you guessed it, Las Vegas. The project will take up to 2 years to complete. No decision as to whether the young or old Elvis will be making an appearance. There are scandalously plans to bring Frank Sinatra back as a hologram as well. I kind of prefer things live, though the hologram may have its advantages. I may just record myself scolding the kids and leave that to them when I go. Can you imagine showing that to the great-grandchildren? Hologram Ray will also be delivering the keynote speech at the EWTN Family Celebration in 2093. Mark your calendars.